Welcome back to another episode of Three Uncool Cats. Alan,
Woo.
Bob,
Yee.
your humble host Andrew here. We're doing probably one of the best power trios ever.
Amen. Woo! Power trio.
Some boys from Seattle.
Us?
Well, besides us,
Yeah.
we are included in that. But
Pump us up.
some boys from Seattle, you might have heard of them. A little band. I think they hit it kind of big for a little while there. We're doing Nirvana Nevermind today, and Alan brought this one to the table, so we're going to let him kick us off.
All right. So,
Tick us off?
Well, that probably did you, I'm sure.
so when it comes to art,
Art.
okay, especially music, but any kind of art, it can be a TV show, a movie, or whatever. Every now and then, something comes along, and it literally changes the world in a lot of ways. It changes the culture. It just starts something different. Bob, I know that you are not a fan of a lot of the music we put out there, and sometimes you don't understand culturally what it meant to a certain generation. This was literally generationally defining. This album, and it resonated with millions of people all over the world. Within weeks of this album coming out, everybody was dressing like the Seattle people, with denim and flannel.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody was growing their hair out the way the Seattle dudes were growing it. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere and be of a certain, being attuned to a certain, part of the culture and not understand this impacted on so many ways that you don't even realize.
Yep.
So this was a huge album.
And when they say disco died, when this album came out, that was the end of 80s heavy metal right
Hair
there.
band,
Done.
it was done. and like when we talked about Stone Temple Pilots about, that was a move against all that excess in music. This kind of music is called grunge. Mm-hmm. And if you really were to immerse yourself into it, you would realize they pull from blues, they pull from punk, they pull from rock, they pull from so much, and it created this new sound, okay? And it was literally a middle finger to all that glam stuff. Mm-hmm. It was getting back to writing something that meant something to you. Okay, whether it was angry or whether it was angsty or whatever it was writing real lyrics. It wasn't all about the hair and the T and the A and all that kind of stuff, okay? So, I'm not going to lie to you, I fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. When this album came out, I bought into it because, to me, I was already tired of that glam stuff from the 80s. And This was the album that I was listening to when I moved out of state for the first time as a young man. I was 21 years old, and I moved to Birmingham, Alabama. We've touched on some stories down there. But this was the stuff I was listening to when I moved down there. Exciting. Not only am I moving out of the house, but I'm moving to a whole nother state. I'm literally on my own for the first time in my life. All that excitement and everything. This was the soundtrack of that time for me. So, to tell you a little bit about Nirvana, it's a trio, okay? 3 guys from Seattle, and one of the things that the singer-songwriter was, Kurt Cobain, he pulled heavily from punk. He was more, when grunge pulls from a lot, he pulled heavily from punk. And one of his favorite bands was a band called the Pixies. And the Pixies were doing this thing called Loud, Quiet, Loud. You have the same 3 chords, right? But depending on what you were singing, you might be crazy in your face or it might be low and mellow. Well, he took it, refined it, and just, made it a thing. He knew that
and
no
he
matter...
always thought they were never as good as the Pixies,
That's
too.
right, yes. I mean, he, and he hated his fame.
Yep.
He hated it. I saw an interview where they were talking to Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl. We got some Dave Grohl stuff coming up here in a minute.
How do you pronounce his name?
Grohl. 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 So Dave Grohl, right? He told a story where he said, we were huge. We were all millionaires quick. And he goes, but he wanted to be riding across the country in a broken down van. He hated the fame. he knew that no matter what he was writing about, it had to have pop sensibility in the melody, but he didn't want pop sensibility in the music, in the instrumental. And unfortunately, Kurt was a troubled man. Mm-hmm. Ended up killing himself, or did he?
I was going to say, I don't know about that.
I want to know your opinion. There's this conspiracy that he was murdered, or that he's, kind of like the whole Elvis thing, that he's
or
not
that
even
he's somewhere
dead.
else. Yep.
He's at a Wendy's in a drive-through somewhere.
Well,
I
don't know. I don't know much about him other than what I learned just trying to research him a little bit. But he carried a book around with him about a guy that moved away from people and got way out in the boonies, and anytime he would get in a place, and it was something about perfume.
Rings a bell.
But anyway, when he would get a scent of either perfume or even a campfire smoke or anything, he'd go the opposite direction. He wanted to be away from people.
Yeah.
And what Kurt Cobain was saying was that's where he wanted to be. Yeah. He wanted to. I felt, and I'll let you go on, but he seemed to me to not like where all the commercialism, even that attached itself to them, he didn't like it.
Yeah, and he even hated the grunge thing. They said, "You're a great grunge band." He was like, "What's grunge?"
Yeah,
he didn't like the titles, the labels.
Yeah, I'm just a musician. Yeah. Now, here's one of the things. I saw this a few years ago in a couple of different documentaries, and it literally broke my heart. Just from a human point of view. And it's when he was getting really bad, and they were somewhere in Europe. Have you ever seen this video? And he just loses it. He's crawling around on stage.
Oh yeah, yep.
And he's bashing his head into the amplifier, not for the the shock value of it, because he was prone to jumping into the drum
set.
The drum set with Dave Grohl and all that. But for shock value, he was broken.
Yeah,
he was a broken, troubled man, and but. What we've all seen from our favorite musicians throughout the years, there's something to be said about a musician who's got his act together and can write something great. But sometimes the best art comes from that troubled mind.
Well, and what I could tell about him was he was probably a genius and didn't know how to reconcile everything. I looked back how these guys, the three that started together, they weren't any different than the guys that I started playing music with, and mine went one direction, theirs went a totally different direction, but it was the same start.
Yeah. Well,
and at that point you just want to play. Yeah. And you want to play what you want to play.
You just want to get that, whatever's inside, you want to get that translated out to the instruments and with the band.
And it's not for other people at that point.
No, it's you. It's for you. I'm going to do this for me, and hopefully people will like it. That's literally the whole point of art, And
another thing that he said in the interview that I saw was that if you have a guitar and you can sing anything, play it and sing whatever you want.
Are you talking about Dave Grohl?
And you're the star.
Or are you talking about Kurt Cobain?
I'm talking Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, because Dave Grohl has that same philosophy. Yeah. One of the things when he talks about, he gets asked all the time about, when you were with Nirvana, he goes, I had one drum lesson.
Yep.
He goes, I remember going back and going, well, what? He says, I need you to change the way you're doing the drums. He was like, one, I don't have the money because I'm broke, and two, I'm just gonna go beat the shit out of the drums, right? So. And
he said Teen Spirit's a disco groove that he learned.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, have you seen that video where he goes, people say I'm a great drummer. Yep. He goes, I stole it from the Gap band.
Yep.
It's the drummer from the Gap band. And he goes, I finally got to meet him one day. And he goes, I looked at him, I said, I've stolen everything from you. And he looked at me, he says, I know. It's literally, and when he plays it, when you hear it.
Yeah, after you say it, you can't get it out of your head.
Right. You're like,
one thing that he said, the drummer, somebody approached him one time and said, you look so angry when you're up there. And he said, I'm not angry, I'm having fun. I just love playing drums.
Yeah.
And he at one point he said he could care less what the lyrics say. He's just playing the drums.
Yeah. From the ashes.
I loved it.
Right. From the ashes of Nirvana, is probably the most successful rock band in the last 20 years, Foo Fighters. Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, have you seen, there's a couple of documentaries out there, but there's one documentary out there about the Foo Fighters, and it shows the first time they played Wembley.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
He starts, it's so overwhelming.
Yep.
The noise of all these tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, and the stage was in the round, and he's like, he could just feel everybody, everything.
And he breaks down on stage. You can see he's struggling with it because it's massive, and he realizes at that moment, this is even bigger than Nirvana. Right? But what I love about Dave Grohl, he's got his own troubles, but what I love about Dave Grohl is I really feel that his spirit is a good spirit.
Yeah.
And
it seemed to be.
And one of the things I like, so he gets off on these rants when he's talking about American Idol. Screw American Idol.
Yep.
He goes, these people go, this is my only chance. He goes, no, it's not. He goes, get some friends together, go play in a band. You know? And then when he talks about how he learned guitar, he goes,
he goes, I drum set.
Yeah, he goes, I just did this. And he goes, if you listen, he goes, when I'm doing this, he goes, that's the hi-hat, and this is the drum. Even when he's playing guitar, he's thinking drums.
Yeah, he said everything he does is all percussive.
Yeah.
Like off of that vibe there.
I think he said he played the guitar longer than he had played the drums.
Yeah. So my favorite Dave Grohl story, there's a couple, and I know we're a little off Nirvana, but it's still there. Is when he breaks his leg.
Oh yeah.
So if you haven't seen this video, look it up. He's doing an arena. Now he's famous for falling off the stage, so he's running around. Half the time he's drunk, right? Mm-hmm. He's rocking out, and then right in the middle of the song he falls off, and you hear he's like, and the band's still playing. I mean, he literally falls off the stage.
I think he was at Glastonbury.
It was Glastonbury, right? And the band is just playing. They're like, oh, what's going on? He goes, I broke my leg. He says, I broke my leg. No, really, I broke my effing leg, right? So they stop the band. They take him backstage, and they go, your leg is broken. You need to go to the hospital. He says, nope. Wrap it up and give me a shot. So they wrap it up and give him some payment. He goes back out, sitting in a chair. Finishes the concert. So, the whole, that's a rock and roll spirit right there. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's rock and roll spirit. But to get back to Nirvana. So here we are. You listened to literally a very important album that changed the culture. What does Bob think?
This is not going to be real funny, okay? This is not humorous. This is...
It'll be funny in its own way.
Yeah.
Well, and here's that, like that blind date I went on. She was pretty in her own way.
Thank God she couldn't see, huh?
I know. But as far as the music, the guys were technically superior musicians. I felt like they were really good at what they played. The vocal or vocals, I don't know if more than one person was hollering like that, but in my my observation was that was just a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of knowing what you want but not knowing what you want, and very much back and forth, not being able to reconcile life and wanting everybody to just leave you alone so that you can do what you want to do, but you don't know what you want to do. There was an awful lot of that.
There was no foundation to his life, if you really think about it. He knew what he wanted, but there was no foundation.
There was no way for him to get it. I felt like he was a genius, but he just couldn't make it all work together.
Yeah.
And he wanted to, but he didn't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just the story of his life. I felt like he was a very tortured soul.
Yeah. I mean, think
talking
about
it. Kurt Cobain. Now the others, the bass player,
Chris Novoselic,
he was funny to me when he was being interviewed.
Yeah.
Because he would call the interviewer brother.
Yeah.
Right.
We're all in this together, brother. And you could tell he's making fun of him, but I don't know. Their personalities seemed pretty cool.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were They had gotten into something that got bigger than them, and that's not really what they wanted.
They wanted to be successful, but they didn't want it to become the beast that it was.
They had gotten into the music because that's what they wanted to play.
Yeah.
So they were playing it, and the crowd started to gather,
Yeah.
and then the music producers started seeing dollar signs.
Yeah.
And they latched on to them and drug them into something that nobody really wanted.
Yeah.
But they couldn't help it at
Right.
that point.
That's interesting. So let's make a promise that when we get that big, we don't let it destroy us.
I don't think that'll happen.
So
I mean, it won't destroy us. We'll get that big.
Right. But no, I think you're right. I mean, that's very insightful, and I think you nailed it. I really do. And when
As far as the music, it didn't have anything for me.
Yeah.
It just didn't. That's not the vein I was in. It's the vein they were in, obviously. And there's no denying that it changed the entire culture in a lot of ways. Kurt Cobain was talking about how people around Seattle, people were talking about Seattle, putting Seattle on the map. He said, "What map?
Right.
Who cares?"
Yeah.
And he really didn't care about that part of it. He wanted to reconcile, I guess, the music, and he had wanted to be successful, and I don't think he could find what that meant after he was rich.
Yeah.
He just couldn't. But he was, and in the words of Bonnie Raitt, he was a walking contradiction.
Yeah.
Because he drove a Volvo for safety.
Yeah, right.
But he terribly abused heroin.
Yeah.
So
it is tragic, and you know, when you're talking about the anger in the lyrics and the lostness in the lyrics, unfortunately, you know, the way it ended, you realize it was real. It wasn't just it wasn't affected. You know, like a lot of these guys, you know, like the whole emo rock thing.
Oh, yeah.
When the emo metal thing happened, oh my gosh.
I don't know what that is.
Emo rock, these guys were wearing eyeliner.
Finding emo?
Oh, it was
Basically.
terrible, dude. It was terrible. Yes, I wish nobody would find emo. But, you know, they would dye their hair black and wear black eyeshadow and everything and try to be rock stars, and they would write these lyrics about being in angst. It was all fake.
Yeah.
This wasn't.
Right.
Okay, so Andrew Scarlatta.
Well, talk about a time machine. I remember exactly where I was when I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I just started college in 91, and I was at my roommate's house in Long Island.
Yeah.
And me and him and a friend of his were coming back from the bars in Long Island, and we had the radio on, and there was some horse shit, you know, playing there, and then Smells Like Teen Spirit came on, and it was like, what just happened right here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm driving down and I don't think it hit them as much as I was like, literally like, what is happening right now? I don't understand what is coming out of the speakers.
I agree. I had that same kind of moment.
Like, you know, and being in school, we didn't have TV, you know, we're in a dorm room. So I didn't know, like, behind the scenes, like, this was on MTV and the video was huge and all that. So for me, it was just literally the music. And I remember as soon as we got back to school, I went out and got this record.
Yeah.
Or CD, I should say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was massive. I was, again, you know, like I said, I just moved to Birmingham when this hit, and it was massive for me. And I was walking through I was working for Walmart, and I was in security. And I was walking through the Walmart, and they had MTV on in the back, and that video came on, and I like you did, I just stopped, and I was like, what is this? But, you know, if you think about what he was saying in that particular song, you know, he's literally singing about the absurdity of it all. He goes, here we are now, entertain us. You know, it's just the absurdity of it. It was gritty, in your face, you know, and I love how they, you know, coming out of the glam, the guys would get up there and they literally, they'd put hairspray in their hair, they would have makeup on, they'd wear tight leather pants, showing all, you know, their chest and everything. And these guys show up and they literally look like homeless guys on stage.
Yeah.
Literally.
That was attractive to me.
Yeah, it was real.
Yeah.
And they'd go, people, they'd say people are spending $300 for a flannel shirt. He goes, we literally got this in the bargain bin because we were cold.
Yeah, they're wearing like old long johns and all that shit.
We were cold. It was the Pacific Northwest.
Well, I don't disagree with their aggravation because of what was going on around them. I don't. It's if you can understand this, it's only the music that I didn't care for.
Yeah.
I came up from 5th grade in elementary school playing a trumpet, and I learned what whole notes were and half notes and quarter notes and eighth notes and a treble clef, and I learned music from the ground up. Didn't get very far, obviously, but but no, it all came together differently for me than it did for them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it has to be under the conditions that I was subjected to, and in order for it to minister to me or connect with me, or for me to go to certain music, whatever I go to it for, it's not that.
Yeah.
It's something different.
I understand.
So, you know, I leaned more toward the story behind it and trying to figure out not really why that kind of music, but tried to look at the people doing it a little harder and not so much the whole notes and half notes.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting you say that, you know, because even though you were young in a tumultuous time, Vietnam, right, everything was still fairly, I mean, there were moments where it wasn't peaceful at all, but the movement was birthed out of peace and supposedly, you know, always had a firm foot in peace. You know, so even though it was a tumultuous time, it was a different way of dealing with that. Where in the 90s, man, everybody was just, everybody was pissed off and angry, you know.
And looking back, it's like, I don't know why. But
right, the 90s were good for me, dude. So, but for whatever reason, I was pissed off in the 90s.
I was too. I have no idea why, but I was. That spoke to me. You know, I think it's odd, like something about this album that struck me, because it has been a while for me since I listened to it, so it was cool for me to go back and kind of refresh my memory. But we talk a lot about how heavy and how raunchy it is sometimes and gritty and all that. But then there's like, I found myself a lot of times not really headbanging, but like toe tapping.
Yeah.
Like On a Plane and Lounge Act, like those songs. You're just, you're going like this and not really headbanging. I thought that dichotomy that they had was pretty interesting.
Yeah. No, I like
You know, their slower stuff is a lot more like, I'm on a plane, instead of headbutting, you know, or head banging and doing all that stuff and having loud guitars. You find yourself kind of tapping like it's just a little, you know, a little doo-wop
It was
song
more
or something.
versatile than what you think.
Exactly. Yep.
It was, yes. I that's a good way of putting it, because I couldn't say it the way you said it, but I felt the same thing. Yeah. But, you know, that kind of gets back to his pop sensibilities.
Yeah.
You know, he wanted everybody to be able to hum along or sing along. So, was there a particular song that you hated more than the others, Bob?
No. No, but I will say that in the interviews that I watched, they played the first song on the album. I heard it several times.
Yeah.
Or parts of it. The intro, at least, and it's very identifiable.
Oh,
I'll
when you hear that,
recognize
when you hear
that.
those chords, it's like, boom, you know exactly what it is.
So I would say I like that one the best for that reason only. But it just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah. I understand.
I thought too. I watched some stuff with Butch Vig talking about recording it, and he was talking about Something in the Way, how they recorded that, and how it's so quiet. And he said they tried all this stuff, trying to get it quiet, and he said Kurt came out of the control room and sat on the couch and started singing it, and he goes, "This is what I want it to sound like." Yeah. And Butch Vig goes, I grabbed 2 microphones. He said he laid on the couch, played his guitar, and sang it. And he said that's what you hear on the. He goes, I did not breathe for 3.5 minutes because you would have heard it in the mics. He goes, I just stood there, sat there in the chair, and listened to him sing that.
Yeah, moody,
Oh, it's so
simple.
gloomy, man.
Yeah.
It's mesmerizing,
Yes.
hypnotizing, any icing you want to put on there. That song is just
Icing on the cake.
But in context of all that rage and anger and the in your face and the loud, quiet, loud, and then all of a sudden this.
Yep.
This was always one of my favorite songs on the album.
That's a great tune.
What pisses me off is the last Batman movie took it and used it as one of the...
Did they?
Yes.
See, that's why I don't watch
They
those
made
movies.
Bruce Wayne. I'm a huge Batman fan. I've been subscribed to Batman comic books for years, right? So I like the new Batman. The new Batman's good, but the Bruce Wayne... He's an emo. He's got his hair down in front, and he's walking around. I couldn't reconcile those two, but he's always like, and every time you would see him in the movie, right, his hair would be down in his face, and he's got and it was like something in the way, and I'm like, oh, don't ruin.
I'm surprised they let
song.
him take that song.
Yeah. So
Courtney must have needed some money or something.
right, yeah. So that's part of the conspiracy is that his wife killed him, Courtney Love. Which wouldn't that be something? Courtney Love commits murder.
Well, he may still be alive off in the woods someplace.
Yeah. So let's on a sidebar. It is possible for people like that who get so much fame and hate it that they could fake their own death. Because I saw something recently.
I mean, Jim Morrison did it.
Yeah. Well, I saw something recently. The Elvis thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the movie Bubba Hotep?
Yes, yes. Of course,
He's in the nursing home.
Yes. What a great movie. And of course, the guy who plays him is hysterical.
Yep.
I love him.
You guys have seen some movies.
That's a cult classic.
It
right
is.
there.
So he's in a nursing home, but then there's like
with JFK, who is a black man.
Yes,
you gotta see it.
Look, it's a riot. It's a riot. But it's a B movie. I might not even be a B movie. It might be a C movie.
Yep.
But it knows what it is, and you have fun watching.
Yep.
It. So
fun's what I like.
Right. So we've always heard that Elvis didn't really die. That he well. Have you seen?
He's a preacher.
The dude that played at Lisa Marie's funeral. The guy comes up there and sings. Looks like Elvis. Sounds like Elvis.
I know.
I mean, I saw that recently. I mean, it's like 2 weeks
saw it
ago.
the other day.
And I was like, huh.
I'm like, what could it be?
Yeah.
Could it be? That's who I saw at the 7-Eleven?
How old would he be now?
He'd be really, because he was 44 in 77 when he died. So he'd be pushing. He'd be pushing it.
He'd be like Bob's age.
Oh!
See what I have to put up with.
Dude, that's twice.
Is that HR calling?
That's twice you've taken a shot at Bob over these episodes.
Marilyn, they're picking on me.
So if he was, if he did fake it, I hope that he's found some peace.
Yeah, I mean, you would think. I mean, because obviously he could have afforded to do a setup like that. Yeah. I doubt that that's the case because he was so tormented.
Yeah.
And he had talked about suicide and just death.
Yeah.
From the time he was 15.
Yeah, and even the famous poster where he was holding the gun.
Oh yeah.
And everybody looks back on that and go, and he was literally holding a gun to his head in that poster. That everybody bought millions of that poster.
But one of the things that I have a struggle with is the people that they, as Nirvana, influenced in ways that they can't even imagine, because a lot of it was subject to the listener's interpretation. Of course, I guess that's any music, really. Yeah. But this was so angry, and I just felt like the people in the audience may be gleaning something that is on a negative side. I don't. Just a thought. I don't know.
Well, one of his.
I think that I use it as an outlet. Like for me, it was an outlet, but I can see where somebody, if you're in that position, like Kurt was, kind of having those feelings, I think he may have pushed you in certain directions that you
impressionable.
probably, more so than helping you. He might have directed you more down the dark path.
Yeah, and I hate that, because I do believe, you've heard that whole argument for years. Art doesn't really influence your. No, it does.
It does.
It does. And that,
when you remember an album for 35 years, it has to mean something.
That's right.
Whether it makes you want to do some bad things or not.
Right. But I'm like Andrew. When I listen to this kind of music, it's just an outlet for aggression.
Yeah.
I'm pissed off at Vivian today, man. And Vivian's not yours anymore because you quit. But it's just a way to let it out. And I can imagine listening to this while I'm on a walk or on working out or something like that. But one of the things, another story that I found.
Did you ever try praying?
Yes, but Vivian
It
is a
doesn't work with
particularly
her.
evil demon, and I don't care because
She's gonna be listening to
she ain't
this.
she ain't gonna listen to this. If she is, so what? So anyway,
I never met her.
Kurt was into the Melvins. I'm wearing the Melvins T-shirt, my favorite one with the two-headed dog.
Two-headed
Right.
dog.
So Kurt was into the Melvins, right? So when he makes it big, he helps the Melvins get a recording contract. You know the story
and the
that
Meat Puppets and
yes,
all those
that.
bands. Yep.
So that shows too. He was willing to help, and he took the he helped the Pixies out because the Pixies were huge for him. But have
Sonic
you heard
Youth?
Yes,
a lot of those bands.
Have you heard?
And that's one thing. I'm sorry, I just thought of something. Something with the I guess the grunge movement, if you want to call it that. Like when you hear those bands talk, they said the biggest difference between that and like the heavy metal stuff is all those bands were competing all the time. And he said all the Seattle bands, we were like this.
Yes.
Every band was like, we were just one big group.
Yeah.
And we were all friends. We all would go see each other play. When somebody did something good, we were like, it's going to help us all.
Well, like with Pearl Jam.
Yep.
With what's his...
Soundgarden.
Oh, yeah, what's the guy? Chris, the singer of Soundgarden. Chris
Cornell.
Chris Cornell.
Yep.
There's literally video back before any of them made it, right? Pearl Jam was huge. Soundgarden was huge. And you'd see Pearl Jam on the stage, and Chris Cornell just jump up there and start hanging with them, man, and then vice versa.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep.
That vibe. But not Chris, but Kurt gets invited to help produce the Melvins' first big album. It's supposed to be all right. We're finally signed. Right? They had to fire Kurt because he was strung out.
Yep.
And I saw the video recently. I was watching a documentary about the Melvins, and he's like, "Yeah," he goes, "We had to fire him because he helped us get our toe in the door." And we're like, "Sorry, dude, you got to go."
No, ADOs.
So I guess when you stack this up, because we know that Bob is, it's way down on his list.
On the fringes over here.
Well, I got a question for you on that note. When I started listening to this, it reminded me of their Unplugged.
Yes.
Which I find equally as influential as this album.
I would agree.
I mean, we should have started them in baby steps and used the Unplugged version.
Yeah.
But to me, those are equally as grandiose to me, and they were huge. That Unplugged was huge.
It was massive, yeah.
Of course, part of it was because it was shortly before Courtney killed. I mean, before.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
So
we don't like Courtney.
Yeah, I can tell.
But I mean, that album to me was just as influential as this, and his voice and the band and that album and that, I guess, performance, was just mind-blowing.
I will tell you, since you brought that up, I heard a little bit of that on one of the videos that I watched, and I thought, now that's better for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think you're right. We should have started him on that because
well, I'm going to take a listen to it anyway.
And the funny thing is I love that Unplugged stuff they did back in the day.
Oh yeah, it was great.
I loved it.
Yep.
But you're right, and a lot of them were really popular. But when they literally released this as an album, the Unplugged album, because it was so huge.
Yep.
Yeah. And he even made that quip at one point about they were trying to tune or something. He goes, "We're a bunch of rich people and can't figure out how to tune." He goes, I don't remember the exact quote, but even then he was just like, "I don't know, whatever." Where are we now on this? Are we ready to wrap up or?
I mean, I don't know what more I could say. I just love it.
Yeah.
It means a lot to me, that
Yeah.
time period.
Yeah.
Just the freshness of everything.
Yeah. Because you got to look, like what you're saying, when certain songs that you listen to that are very important to you from your youth, it's when you were becoming a man, when you're fully adult. We were just now stepping into adulthood when this culture.
And I think that matters a whole lot.
It does. And, like I said, how for me, it was because I knew, and I'd already been living on my own for a while, but I was 20 minutes down the road, right? This was the album when I was moving to a whole nother state, knew that there's no lifeline now.
Yeah.
There's no life. And we didn't have Venmo back then, so it looked like you could, Mom, Dad, send me some money. You said, well, I'm here. I got to figure out how to pay the bills.
Yeah. And that's why I went to, college isn't quite the same as starting real life, but it's like, all right, you're in your dorm room, and then your parents are gone. You're just like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do?
And when it hits you, it's like the first night that I was by myself. I mean, again, I was only 20 miles down the road, but I had that same feeling the first night that I was 300 miles away from home. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm on my own.
Yep.
Now I understand why I migrated toward Barbra Streisand when I moved to Tennessee.
Oh my God, I hate Barbra Streisand. Oh my gosh, that makes me want to vomit.
I was joking, okay? Don't hate me.
Don't hate him because he's beautiful.
I'm having to take breaths, man. Don't ever mention that name in my presence again. That carries such negative connotation.
Oh my, I don't know. I don't want to know what happened in your life with that.
Okay, but I will tell you.
I bet it has to do with Zestos.
Everything circles around Zesto.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. We'll end this one on this life story. One of Alan's whack job life stories. All right. So I go to Birmingham. Here's what they did. I was catching shoplifters at the time, right? This is right before I started wanting to be a comedian. I wanted to be a comedian, but I was like, how do I be a comedian, right? So anyway, I'm catching shoplifters at Walmart, right? But at the time I thought, well, comedian.
Did you get a lot of material from the work in there?
Yes.
I mean, that'd be a bountiful place to get something.
The stories from the Black Crow, Beth and I were doing that together, right? So she can tell those types of stories too, because there was always something going on, crazy stuff. You see, it wasn't just, I'm going to steal this mouse. Right? Yeah. It was crazy stuff. But anyway, which I'm getting ready to tell you. Okay. So at this point in my life,
he precedes these things with what he's going to say.
Yeah.
Right. So at this point in my life,
it's kind of like, I'm going to ask you what your opinion is. Yeah. What's your opinion?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to tell you a crazy story. Here's a crazy story.
Okay.
So I wanted to be a comedian, but I didn't know how. Right. So I thought, well. What a lot of us do. What can I do to make money? I'm like, all right, these dudes are investigators for Walmart. They're working with the FBI, the TBI, the GBI, and all this, and they're doing undercover stuff and all that. Yes, this was a thing, right? I want to do that. Well, I was catching shoplifters, and I knew that was the stepping stone. So I'm talking to the guy over me. One of these days, I'll tell you a story about him. He taught me so much about life. Billy Myers. If you ever listen, Billy, I love you, man. You changed my life for real. So Billy comes to me. He says, "If you go to Birmingham, Alabama, the stores down there, and they're getting hammered with theft. You go down there and you do good things like you're doing here. We'll promote you. We'll make you an investigator, and we'll teach you all this kind of stuff while you're down there, and we'll promote you and give you your own." We called them districts, 25 stores that you had to go in and work all these theft cases in. I said, I'm in, man. I'm in. So I packed my stuff up and I moved to Birmingham, Alabama, right? So he hands me off to a new guy named Richard Robinson. Richard, if you're still alive too, brother, you played a big role in my life. You got me. So Richard, I'm doing a good job. Man, I'm catching shoplifters. I'm identifying internal theft and all this. And Richard comes to me one day. He says, hey, he goes, man, tomorrow, he goes, some folks are flying in to interview you from Arkansas. This is back when it wasn't a joke to work for Walmart, right? And I'm like, okay. He says, I just need you to be ready. I don't know what time we'll be here, but he goes, I'll show up. It's him, two other guys from home office, right? All right. He goes, just be ready. He goes, kind of look your best. You don't have to dress up because, you're supposed to catch shoplifters, look like everybody else, but just kind of, don't look too sloppy. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I'm walking around this store, and I see this girl shoplifting. This ain't no girl. This is a boxer. She big, she mean, right? She and I'm like, I got to do something. I mean, she's stealing some expensive stuff, right? So I don't know what time they're going to be here. I can knock this out. So I go out, I go, step in front of her. Excuse me. She punches me right in the face. Right? It's on. I mean, it is hand-to-hand combat. At some point, her blouse comes off, right? And then she is on top of me, and she's literally on top of me, and she is punching me in the face, right?
With her fist?
With her fist, right? And I'm just, at this point, I'm in defense mode, man.
There's stuff flying everywhere.
I'm like, what is going on? I'm getting my butt handed to me in the parking lot of a Birmingham Walmart, right? So I get her, and I get her, and I flip her over, right? And I pull out my handcuffs, and I put the handcuffs on her, and I look over, and Richard comes driving by with those two guys, and he's just looking at me like, "Oh my God, what is Alan done?"
If I was Richard, I'd be like, "You're hired."
So we got this big girl. I got this big. I'm bleeding, right? I got this big girl in the parking lot of Birmingham, Alabama. I got her handcuffed, but she's only wearing her bra. So that's my Birmingham.
Sounds like it was staged to me.
No. I'm telling you. So anyway. Then I went back in, cleaned myself up, and I probably listened to some Nirvana after that.
Well, now I understand.
Now it makes sense.
Now it makes sense.
All right, so if we wrap it up, we got our 3 questions. Bob?
Andrew?
I'm going to use my typical one.
Yeah.
Should it be taught in schools?
Heck yes.
Yep.
Heck yes. Even for the tragedy of it.
Yeah.
Or
just for the social movement.
Yeah, there's so
there's
much.
a lot.
I'm going to say no this time.
Socially and...
I'm going to say no.
Okay. He said everything I would have said on it. Why not?
That's a totally separate question. Is that your
You only
question?
get one question.
You only get one question.
I'm going to ask you why not.
Why not? Wait, that's 2 questions. Oh, wait, I didn't even get to ask a question.
Why not? Because I try to just call me biased, and I try to think about things that are good and pleasant and pure and of good report, and this doesn't lend itself to that in my brain. So
can I ask you a question?
This is just 3 questions all of a sudden.
So we just did a review of the Doobie Brothers, and that one song where he's flying down the road.
I knew this was going to come out.
Flipping the bird at the cops.
Yeah.
He could have killed people. He could run over a nun trying to save some orphans.
Yeah.
Or running over orphans trying to save a nun.
Oh, okay. That's even worse.
Wow. It's getting deep. Okay, so here's how that plays into it. I listened to the Doobie Brothers back then in the day.
Yeah.
Prior to being a Christian. And I listened to Nirvana. They don't like being called Nirvana either.
No.
But Nirvana, I listened to them just 3 days ago for the very first time.
Yeah.
So,
but it seems like his scale, which is very fluid on how he rates people, his number scale. I think
the lyrical message is also the same.
It's very fluid. but back then,
because I'm me, okay?
So what was your question?
I do want to read you what I wrote. Like it or not, Nirvana, for any number of reasons, had a significant impact on our culture.
There you go.
That I admit.
Well said.
Then why wouldn't you not teach it? I'm just saying. I feel that your dad would teach it.
Oh, he would love to.
Yeah. Because your dad's got, he's able to not be so fluid.
Yes,
in his...
yes. He's more definitive.
We love you, Bob. All right, so my question is, and I'm going to answer my question here in a second. Would you let aliens, if aliens landed today and says, show us some culture, would you play this for the aliens?
I would try to shield it from them with everything that I had.
But why?
For the same reasons you wouldn't teach it in school?
No, because I've always wanted to go into outer space, and I figured they would take me if I
didn't,
yeah.
Would you play it for the aliens?
Oh, yes.
Why?
I think it shows a different side of the human emotion, as well as the social impact I had.
Well,
If they want to learn about humans, they got to listen to everything.
That's a good
They
point.
can't just listen to happy stuff.
Yeah, we're not.
But they may not know that.
Yeah, I'd be afraid it would cause an intergalactic war.
That's what I'd be afraid of.
So, all right. So I guess we are at the end of this. So Andrew, well, first, Bob, thank you. Because we know sometimes we're really
You've been very open to some of these.
And we love you
try
for
to look
it.
beyond.
I'm going to really
whole
start
notion.
pushing the envelope on a couple of these too. So
Yeah.
And I tell you what, it's taxing on me. I mean, I try to give it everything I've got, and I listen to them, and knowing that it's just not.
yeah.
It's not meshing up, it's like gears in a transmission and the second gear's out. It will not go in. But I try to look beyond that because these are people. People make music.
Yep. Well, they used to.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. But I try to look at that side of it to maybe get some insight into why. Maybe not.
Yeah.
But with Nirvana, it's back to what I said. I feel like we all started at the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were three guys in school that just wanted to play some music.
Yep.
And I thought that was a really insightful take on that. I did like that.
Yep.
But I appreciate that you're willing to do this kind of stuff because I know we're stretching you on some of this stuff.
Hey, it's all good.
I mean, he's done it to us too.
He has.
Just because it's not loud music doesn't mean
it's good.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to hate some of mine because I'm going to bring some in here that's,
I tell you
probably
what.
make you throw up.
I nearly became an emo when I had to listen to Steely Dan.
Yeah,
I mean, I was seriously.
Oh, man, I've heard so many good comments about Steely Dan.
People are just trying. They like you, Bob. Have you not noticed? Nobody
No.
likes me and Andrew.
I know. I don't know. what it
Nobody.
It's not that.
They think Andrew is a secret Swiftie. They just don't like me because I talk too much, but they love you.
Well, it's because I like Taylor Swift.
is. Oh,
You
Lord. All right. On that note, subscribe.
5 stars.
If you love Bob that much, subscribe. Come on. It's
He
not
needs
that
it.
hard.
He needs
Click
it.
that
Yeah,
button.
I need it.
As
Help a
always,
brother out.
stay uncool. Like what you like. Deuces.